Over 6.5 million Honduran citizens will vote this November 30th to choose a new president that will conduct the fate of the country for the next 4 years in the midst of an election process marked by a strong foreign intrusion. Venezuelan Executive Vice President Delcy Rodriguez condemns blockade of the country's airspace by the U.S. and announces the activation of a repatriation plan for Venezuelan citizens in the United States. And the Israeli army violated the ceasefire in Gaza and escalated its military operations in the West Bank. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Honduras, more than 6.5 million citizens are called to the polls in this Sunday's general elections amid allegations of sabotage and marked by the interference of U.S. President Donald Trump. The National Electoral Council ordered a special deployment of law enforcement agencies to ensure a peaceful environment, a measure supported by international observers. There are more than 18,000 polling stations throughout the country on a day that will decide not only the presidency but also the renewal of Congress and municipal governments. According to the latest polls, 3 of the 5 presidential candidates are practically tied in voter intention. And as we were saying, Honduran is ready for the upcoming elections this Sunday, November 30th. Let's take a look at the presidential candidates. We begin with Rixi Moncada. Godoy is the candidate for Liberty and Refoundation Party and represents continuity of the current government's progressive agenda. A lawyer, former judge, and the first woman to serve as Honduras Minister of National Defense, Moncada has held key roles. She was key to the post-2009 resistance against the U.S.-backed coup that ousted President Manuel Zelaya and later helped found the Libre Party. She was appointed defense minister by President Xiomara Castro amid perceived threats to national sovereignty. We move on with the candidate for the National Party, Nasri Juan Asfura. He is a wealthy construction tycoon and former mayor of Tegucigalpa and the candidate of Honduras' traditional right-wing establishment. Notably, he has been publicly endorsed by former U.S. President Donald Trump, who declared Asfura the candidate Washington would support and on whom future U.S. aid allegedly depends. Asfura's 2021 presidential run ended in defeat, but his return is seen as an attempt to reinstall the political forces linked to former President Juan Orlando Hernandez, now serving a U.S. prison sentence for drug trafficking and weapons smuggling. He was named in the Pandora Papers for offshore holdings and faced corruption allegations. And finally, we have the candidate for the Liberal Party, Salvador Alejandro Nasrallah. He is a former TV host and engineer and presents a more unpredictable variable. Originally running as an anti-establishment figure, Nasrallah joined Libre's 2021 ticket as first presidential designate after dropping his own candidacy, only to later break with Castro's government. U.S. President Donald Trump recently accused him of pretending to be anti-communist just to split Asfura's vote. His current campaign attempts to position him as a centrist alternative through his shifting alliances have raised questions about his consistency. Now we have our short break coming up. Remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English. We will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Venezuela, the Bolivarian National Armed Forces strengthens the defense of its coast, where maneuvers are being conducted to guarantee the country's sovereignty. The objective is to carry out a coastal defense exercise within the framework of Operation Independence 200. In the state of Anzoátegui, the Integral Defense Operational Zone deployed air defense systems to protect the territory. Meanwhile, on the coast of Puerto Cabello, Carabobo State, the positions of the field artillery were reviewed, while in Miranda State, territorial defense plans were adjusted. The organized people's power and local authorities are actively participating in the work, reaffirming that the protection of the nation is a shared responsibility. Venezuelan Executive Vice President teleSUR Rodriguez condemns blockade of the country's airspace by the U.S. and announces the activation of a repatriation plan for Venezuelan citizens in the United States. In a statement, the Vice President said the U.S. government has granted Maria Machado's request to attempt to block Venezuela's airspace. In response to this aggression, President Nicolás Maduro has ordered a special plan for the return of Venezuelans stranded in other countries, as well as to facilitate the departure itineraries of those who must travel outside our territory. Venezuela has activated all multilateral mechanisms in accordance with international law for the immediate cessation of this illegitimate and illegal action. Venezuela will always prevail. The Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America expressed through a communique in their website and profile on social network X their condemnation of U.S. President Donald Trump's threats against Venezuela's airspace sovereignty. The statement says, "This announcement, which is deeply hostile, disproportionate, and incompatible with international law, constitutes an act of political aggression that reaffirms Washington's imperial behavior against the free peoples of Latin America." ALBA also denounces that this threat is part of a geopolitical plan aimed at eroding the self-determination of Latin American and Caribbean states through military, economic, and diplomatic pressure. The organization also stated that attempting to exercise extraterritorial jurisdiction over Venezuelan territory, imposing instructions or conditioning the integrity of its airspace is not only illegal, but also constitutes an arrogant provocation against the entire region. It is the reaffirmation of an old pattern, the one of those who still believe they have the right to impose rules on our skies, our borders, and our destiny. And top House Armed Services leaders Mike Rogers and Adam Smith launched rigorous oversight of President Trump's Caribbean military operations of Venezuela. Senate panel joins probe into Defense Secretary Hesketh's orders to kill narco boat suspects and survivors. Bipartisan House statement pledges close watch on Defense Department's operations in Caribbean waters. The move follows reports Hesketh commanded lethal strikes after September 2nd narco boat attack, targeting all involved, including those in the water. Senators echo commitment, directing inquiries to uncover full facts, and warns Trump's Venezuela moves risk another costly overseas war without congressional approval. And in the United States as well, President Donald Trump's approval rating has reached its lowest point in the 10th month of his second term. According to a survey by the Gallup consulting firm, President Trump's approval rating has fallen to 36%. While the majority of U.S. citizens disapprove of his performance, the new rating is 1 point lower than that recorded last July, although the polling company noted that in the months since then, it has been between 40 and 41%. Trump's lowest historical rating is 34% and occurred after the attack on the Capitol at the end of his first term in January 2021. The poll indicates that 60% of U.S. citizens disapprove of the way the president has handled the affairs of the presidency since January 2025.
It's horrible. As you know, the other young man is fighting for his life.
And in Mexico, at least 3 people died and 6 were injured after a fireworks explosion in the north of the country. An intense mobilization of emergency services was recorded in the municipality of Pesquería, Nuevo León, following an explosion in a house that stored fireworks. The chain of explosions in the neighborhood caused serious damage to the facades of houses, 4 of which were damaged by the disaster. Also, according to Nuevo León Civil Protection, 2 of the victims died inside, while a 3rd person died in the hospital. And several children were injured due to the fire caused by the fireworks. And moving on to Peru, the armed forces were deployed to the border area with Chile after interim President Jose Heri declared a state of emergency in Tacna. Uniformed officers arrived at the Santa Rosa border complex to strengthen surveillance, coordinate joint operations, and improve response capacity at immigration checkpoints. The state of emergency on the border with Chile was declared after Chile's right-wing presidential candidate Jose Antonio Cas proposed the immediate expulsion of all foreigners in an irregular status. For his part, the Minister of the Interior arrived in the tension-ridden area to coordinate additional measures with representatives of the Army, the National Police, Migration, as well as other regional and local institutions and authorities. In Indonesia, the death toll from flooding exceeds 300, according to reports from the National Disaster Management Agency. The deaths were reported in the localities of North Sumatra, West Sumatra, and Aceh, while 279 people are missing. The head of the National Agency for Disaster Countermeasures, Surhayanto, emphasized that operations must be intensified as weather conditions in the affected areas begin to improve. The agency stated that 3 critical tasks are being prioritized: locating the missing, restoring communication lines, and ensuring the rapid delivery of aid and supplies to affected communities. Rescue teams continue to search for missing persons in the affected areas and transport the injured. Meanwhile, in Thailand, the death toll from flooding rose to 162 while water levels are falling and 9 provinces remain affected. According to the Department of Disaster Prevention and Mitigation, more than 1 million households affecting at least 2,963,894 people have reported damage. The province of Songkhla is so far the most affected, with more than 633,000 households suffering the consequences of flooding, heavy rains, and landslides. And Sri Lanka is another country that reported an increase in the number of deaths due to flooding caused by Cyclone Ditwa, with 132 confirmed deaths. According to statements by the director of the Disaster Management Center, the Army managed to rescue 69 people, although 176 people remain missing. After passing through Sri Lanka, the cyclone is heading towards northern India, where airports have canceled about 54 flights due to the forecast for the next 48 hours. We now have our second break coming up. Before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Watch your break, don't go away. Welcome back. In Palestine, the Israeli army attacked several areas of the Gaza Strip, violating the ceasefire in effect since October 10th, while intensifying its military operations in the occupied West Bank. The attacks included helicopter gunfire and combat aircraft bombing of the southern cities of Khan Yunis and Rafah, as well as intense fire near the Morak axis and airstrikes against the Al Bureij refugee camp. Moreover, a large-scale operation to demolish Palestinian structures was added during the night of Sunday. The violation of the ceasefire has had a devastating human cost. According to official data, more than 350 Palestinians have been killed and more than 900 injured since the deal came into effect. In France, thousands of people gathered in Paris in solidarity with the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip, more than a month after the ceasefire was declared. Under heavy police presence, the demonstration in Paris denounced the genocide in Gaza, demanding Palestinian self-determination and recognition as an independent state. In this context, participants urged the French government to stop supplying weapons to Israel and to go beyond formal condemnations. Demonstrators also called for real peace and the implementation of international criminal court orders, emphasizing the importance of unity among French solidarity groups to enhance their influence. Palestine's ambassador to Cuba, Amar Sorba, urged the international community on Sunday to promote the cessation of Israel's attacks on Gaza and the end of the occupation of its country. The inalienable right of the Palestinian people to choose their own path must be respected, Sorba asserted during a meeting with members of the International Democratic Federation of Women. The ambassador also denounced Israeli forces have killed more than 60,000 Palestinians in the last 2 years, most of them women and children. Furthermore, she reported that during the same period, more than 160,000 have been injured, thousands have been arrested, and millions are living in famine. As of today, more than 90% of the Gaza Strip is destroyed, as are several camps in the West Bank. In the northwest of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, at least 20 people died and several remain missing after a boat capsized on Lake Mai-Ndombe. According to resident testimonies, the boat, which was traveling from the town of Kiri to Kinshasa, when it capsized between the villages of Bobeni and Lobeke on Thursday night. In this scenario, the local diocese confirmed that among the dead is a newly ordained Catholic deacon. So far, the governor of Mai-Ndombe, Kevani Koso, has stated that the government has not yet issued an official figure for the number of victims or survivors, as it is waiting for details from the rescue teams. Boat capsizing is common in Central African countries where poor road conditions force the population to use ship-overloaded wooden boats with a shortage of life jackets. And thousands of people protested on Sunday in the Philippine capital over a multi-billion-dollar corruption scandal involving infrastructure projects in which authorities, legislators, and construction companies have been accused. Fury over the so-called ghost flood control projects has grown in recent months in the archipelago country, where entire villages have suffered flooding caused by typhoons. The protesters who marched along a street in downtown Manila were the People's Power movement that helped bring about the fall of President Ferdinand Marcos' father, once paraded, chanted, "Imprison them now." The first arrests in the scandal, announced a few days ago, were 8 members of the Department of Public Works and Highways. In a modest workshop in Poland, glass artisans create luxury Christmas baubles that are building a global reputation and are sold in high-end stores. These baubles come in a variety of shapes and intricate designs. The ornaments are all handmade at Glitter Lab's modest workshop, from the blowing of the glass to the decoration. The owner of Glitter Lab, Barbara Mostowska, says these are ornaments they hope their customers have in their homes year-round and not just displayed on the Christmas tree, as they like to think of their products as simple home decorations. Each piece of glassware is made entirely by hand in small series ranging from more than 300 copies.
People increasingly value handmade craftsmanship. In an age when you can buy anything, anywhere, for next to nothing, something made from scratch here in a European country with honest work and thoughtfulness is truly valued by customers. So, knowing how much it costs to produce is one thing. But, on the other hand, customers also see enormous value in it, especially in the fact that these baubles are made in Poland. Poland itself has a very strong brand in this market.
It's like collecting completely different things. Stamps, coins. It's the same thing with these baubles. And I think that's the point, the desire to own something unique. If it's handmade, the price automatically goes up. And here, all of our baubles are handmade, so each bauble is unique.
Like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thanks for watching.